It's a challenging week 9 in NFL DFS on DraftKings and FanDuel as offensive juggernauts San Francisco, Detroit, Kansas City, Buffalo, Miami, Cincinnati, and the LA Chargers are all off the main slate. We'll turn lemons into lemonade as we prepare cash lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel coming up next. Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Lee.
And I'm Michael Wiley, and we're the Fantasy Football Consultants. Eric, I'm dressed a little warm today. You're not wearing your regular polo. What's going on?
I had to give tribute to a longtime listener, Dave, who gave a challenge. He said he would buy everyone on his Christmas list an FFC hoodie if a guy that we recommended last week, Brandon Powell, could get 10 points. And I got my calculator here. He totaled 0.2. So he's safe. But Michael, there was a bunch of other of our picks. In fact, we both faded Powell when it came to turning in our lineup on NFL on DFSHub.
See, it looks like a successful week. Man, look at Joel Goldman hitting over 200. Eric, congratulations to you. 5th place. Good week for you. It looks like it was a good week.
I was feeling very good about my chances until Brandon Ayuk didn't quite come for me at the end of the game. But man, I actually would see that there are 2 FFC folks who finished ahead of me. Correspondent Damon Levy finished 3rd. But let's not bury the headline. Congratulations to you, Mr. Wiley.
Yeah, and we got a couple of the guys we talked about the whole time last week in the lineup there. A couple, like you say, shifts last minute. But, took a little bit more upside to get there. But because this has really been some high scoring on DFSHub, really impressed by what we've been seeing week in and week out from the group that's on this play.
All right. Well, once again, congratulations to Joel Goldman. All right, let's see if we can repeat our performance this week by getting a bunch of solid core players. There are 4 players that we have in both our FanDuel and DraftKings cash lineup, and they have one thing in common, all 4 players. They're very important parts of their offense, and they have tremendous matchups. So let's start with Saquon Barkley, who is $7,900 on DraftKings and $8,600 on FanDuel. Michael, the last 3 weeks, Saquon Barkley has had touches of 28, 24, and 39. 39 touches. That's ridiculous. And this week, he is in a dome against the Las Vegas Raiders, who have the 30th ranked rush defense. They don't have a coach. They don't have a GM. They don't have an offensive coordinator. And although Tyrod Taylor is out, it does look like Daniel Jones, their original starter, is back at quarterback. He did practice in full today on Wednesday. So I feel good about this New York Giant offense. And if the Giant offense does something, you can guarantee Barkley would be a big part of it.
Yeah, I think he's basically they run the offense through him. And I say we just stick in that game and go with another player who is the only part of the offense that they got going for him right now. And that's Josh Jacobs, at the Raiders. If you watched the game on Monday night, you saw there really wasn't anything else that can be done right now with how Jimmy G is playing other than to go through Jacobs. He's getting basically all the touches. He's 7,500 on FanDuel and 6,900 on DraftKings, going up against the 24th ranked rush defense. This is how these teams get things done, is by giving it to their backs. Josh Jacobs should even get more involved in the passing game if Jimmy G can actually get rid of the ball. So we really like at these prices the upside and the floor that both these guys have.
Admittedly, we spent some money on these 2-star running backs, so we need to save money at wide receiver. And I'm going to start with Nico Collins. He is $5,800 on DraftKings and $1,000 more, $6,800 on FanDuel. He faces the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, look, full disclosure, the entire Houston pass offense behind CJ Stroud has struggled in the last couple of weeks. But let's be clear, the number one wide receiver on this team is Nico Collins. The last 2 weeks, he has led all wide receivers in targets and receptions. And Robert Woods, one of his chief competitors for targets, is out again this week. And I think Stroud and company are going to bounce back because they face the 28th ranked pass defense of Tampa Bay. It's like the old Tampa Bay Bucks. They're much easier to pass on than run against. So I like Collins here, Michael.
Yeah, no, like the floor there, and certainly the upside that he brings. Going to go with the similar theme in terms of price and defense against with Chris Olave going up against the Bears, the 30th ranked pass defense in the league. He's 6,900 on FanDuel and 6,000 on DraftKings. Yes, his running back is stealing a lot of the targets, but actually he's still leading the team in targets. I'd like to see Derek Carr push the ball downfield a little bit more and not to just one pass to Shaheed down the field. And Chris Olave is the key to that. He got a couple of those long passes snaked by Shaheed, but he really is, kind of cream of the league in a lot of ways. You feel like that if the Saints are going to continue to this little win streak that they have, they got to employ Olave even more down the field. And so he'll continue to get his targets. He's got a really nice floor and I think some real upside.
All right. This is a good starting point for both our FanDuel and DraftKings lineups. Let's see how we complete it. We'll start with FanDuel. All right. So we have left $30,200 to spend, a little over $6,000 per player. Let's finish our running backs. And let's go with a guy who I'm shocked that is really dropped in price, as even though he's a bell cow, is Tony Pollard. And I understand he has had a couple of bad games. He's at $6,600. And he has struggled. He especially has struggled in games in which the Cowboys have had a blowout, even when they were the ones doing the blowout. I don't understand why Dak Prescott threw 4 touchdowns and he didn't get any of the touchdown equity early on. But late in the game, he's being pulled when the games aren't close. I think this game against Philadelphia, a 3-point spread, is going to be very competitive. I just want to comment that the games that we want to get some exposure on, Dallas and Philadelphia are the highest scoring game, 46, Indy and Carolina 44, and Seattle and Baltimore 43. So let's get exposure to this Dallas Cowboy game with Tony Pollard. He is a guy who is going to get the goal line carries, is going to get involved in the passing game, and normally should be a bell cow. So 6,600 is too cheap. I know that Philadelphia is the top ranked rush defense, but I'm comfortable given that the high point total that he'll get his. All right, we'll switch and stay in that game though. On the other side, let's spend some money, Michael. I am going to choose to go to quarterback and spend some money with Jalen Hurts on the other side. If you look at his game log, he is amazing of his floor. In the last 7 games, his lowest point total on FanDuel is 22 points. That's insane. It deals with the fact that he has such an amazing rushing floor. And thanks to the tush push, he's almost certain to get 1 rushing touchdown a game. He would have got that last week, but he fumbled inside the 1. So getting Jalen Hurts at $9,000, I think makes a lot of sense given that we're getting both sides of by far the highest scoring game on the main slate.
Yeah, I really like that pick. Philadelphia also added a little play off of the tush push, which I actually think makes it even easier to get that tush push. And so, if they're on that half-yard line, you can guarantee that the way they're going to go is to put Hurts in the end zone. So, yeah, getting a guy with such a high floor, some of the other similarly high priced quarterbacks just don't have anywhere near that consistency. So like that a lot. And then Tony Pollard, yeah, his price is down. If it wasn't, I'd say we can't go there because of who he's going up against. But they got to win this game. It's an important game, and I think Tony Pollard's going to be a part of that. And we got to get some guys this week where we got a lot of stars out of the main slate. We got to get some guys with some high potential.
So let's talk a little bit about a pivot at quarterback. If you go way down at only $6,500, so that's $2,500 less than Jalen Hurts, is Gardner Minshew. Do we like him as much as Hurts? Of course not, because look at the price total. But if you want to do what we normally do, which is not pay up at quarterback, and you want to try to save some money, they are facing the Carolina Panthers this week. If you take a look at the summary, they are a very generous defense, a little stronger against the pass and the rush. But again, as I've said before, a lot of that is on game script. Why? Because Carolina Panthers have been behind almost all year. So the case is that teams normally pass a run on them late and end up scoring. This game, according to the lines makers, it should be a more competitive game. It's only a 3-point spread at Carolina. Now, if you do that, you can potentially spend up at wide receiver. One of the guys that we like, if you're going to spend up, is A.J. Brown. But he's just so expensive. Even if you make that switch from Hurts to Minshew, there's not enough money to get to A.J. Brown. But we understand if you want to go with Brown or you want to go with Lamb, the premier receivers in this high-scoring game, we understand. We'll fill it out with a lower-cost guy in Zay Flowers. He is only $6,100 on FanDuel. And people were definitely disappointed about his performance last week. Even though he consistently gets targets, he didn't do very much with those targets last week. But here's the thing to keep in mind. He is a lot like the two other wide receivers we have in our lineup. He is the clear number one wide receiver on his team. Probably not the number one weapon, that is Mark Andrews, but he's the number one wide receiver. He is home, and he faces a defense in Seattle that does a much better job against the run versus the pass. That should definitely be the case with Seattle just adding another key defensive lineman, Leonard Williams, from the Giants. So happy to get Flowers in at a really small price of $6,100. That just leaves just a little bit of money to spend at tight end and defense. Let's get Jake Ferguson once again hammer in on this high-scoring game. He's the tight end of the Dallas Cowboys. Again, the Eagles are so tough against the run, so we are thinking that Ferguson should get some play in the passing game. It's interesting to note how involved Ferguson has been inside the 10-yard line. He has 5 targets, and in the red zone, he's had 11 targets this year. That's what you want to see out of your tight end, especially if he's only 5,100 and he's involved in the highest scoring game on the main slate. And finally, not much to say about our defense. We don't have much money to spend, but I'm not going to spend it all in Arizona. Let's pick up on the LA Rams at $3,300. A lot of this has to do with the fact that I just do not think much of this Green Bay offense. A little disappointed on the sacks. They don't quite have 2 sacks a game, but this is a punt defense. Michael?
Yeah, so specifically Ferguson, I want to talk a little bit about what we saw last week coming out of the bye from Dak Prescott, who has historically been really good with his tight ends. He's not been right since really, maybe that first game. He needed something to happen. I think the bye was exactly what he needed. Kind of remember what that there needs to be offense. Their defense isn't good enough to win all the games for them, especially against teams like Philadelphia. I'm really excited to see this game. I think it's going to be a great game. I think Philly obviously, they're at home, and is the team to beat right now. But I think Dallas can make it happen. And one of the things that's going to require that is that Jake Ferguson gets involved. Overall, really like this lineup again, couched in the fact that we got a lot of stars out of the main slate. What we consistently like to do in cash game is go with high floor, and we got some guys with some real upside here. Really, really high floor with this lineup.
Yeah, so one final pivot for you. If you really are not liking those last two picks that we made, we have $100 to spend elsewhere. You can go down to Carolina, and save $100 on defense, and you're getting very similar in quality, and that gives you $200, and you can go from Jake Ferguson up to Trey McBride at $5,300. I would have done that if Joshua Dobbs was still the quarterback on Arizona. It is so clear that Joshua Dobbs loves dumping off passes to his tight end. By the way, if it turns out by the end of the week that Dobbs is going to be the starting quarterback in Minnesota, I might spend the money to get TJ Hawkinson, because I would expect Hawkinson to get a lot of action in this particular game. But one pivot, if that is the route you want to go. We don't know as of this moment whether it's going to be Kyler Murray or Clayton Tune, but it looks like, if all indications are, it's going to be Clayton Tune.
Okay, Eric. So here is we got the start of our lineup in there. We've got a remaining 23,100 available to us here on DraftKings, which is really, and it's only 4,600 per player. So we're going to have to be clever with that, especially with where we want to start from a running back perspective. And that's to go all the way up to the most expensive running back, Alvin Kamara. Here we are in a PPR league. We want to get somebody with a really high floor that also has some upside. And if you've been watching how New Orleans is running their offense, which isn't surprising because Derek Carr is at the quarterback position, it's a lot of dump offs to Alvin Kamara, and that will continue. He's getting kind of all the important running back play. He's getting spelled a little bit, but look, he's getting almost 20 carries a game. Not quite as many receptions this last week as he had a couple weeks ago, and then a few weeks before that. But ever since he came back from being out, he has just continued to produce really, really nice high floor. And I think in on a lot of sites, consider the number one running back, even including the games that aren't on the main slate this week. So he's a little bit cheaper here on DraftKings. Let's get him in there. And then again, we got to save throughout because of that. So at the quarterback position, we really can't afford any of the guys here at the top. They're just priced so much higher here on DraftKings. We've already talked about Jalen Hurts, who would be one that we wouldn't mind getting in there, but let's save some money and let's go all the way down to Bryce Young. So he is 5,100. Maybe show him up there if you would. He looked pretty good in this first week after the bye. I think Carolina got the bye at a good time for Bryce Young. And so he looked a little bit better. His completion percentage was up from the prior weeks. He was able to, kind of push the ball a little bit more, and he's going up against the 25th pass defense in the league. I think, as Eric alluded to earlier, this game should be a close game. It's not going to be Carolina just trying to pass the ball, but to come back. But I still think that Bryce Young will play a big role. I'd like to see him use his legs more. I think at this price tag, with what we have left, he kind of is the most interesting play. Now, there's a couple pivots, and I'm happy to hear what you have to say about that, Eric. But what do you want to think? What do you think of these two picks?
Yeah, we'll see how much money we actually spend, but $100 more. We talked up in FanDuel about the value of Minshew in that same game, just on the other team. But I think that the real interesting thing here, Michael, is, when we already built in Barkley and Jacobs in our lineup, we can spend up on one other guy. So if you're wondering, do you want to go with Alvin Kamara? The issue is, do you want AJ Brown, or do you want a top quarterback like Jalen Hurts? So we decided that this would be the route that made the most sense on DraftKings. Don't know if you want to comment about that decision.
Yeah, no. So that is the other potential really high upside option. Obviously, a similar floor, but going up a pretty tough, stingy, Dallas defense. That's part of what was, played into the decision there. And similar to what you mentioned on FanDuel, I think it's kind of what the alternatives are. So in the running back position, we think there's just such a big drop off in a PPR league like DraftKings from Kamara. And there's some of these other exciting options, which is why we went with Olave and Collins. And now we're going to pair with them a much cheaper option, who's now the number one because of the injury to Kendrick Bourne, and that is Demario Douglas of New England going up against Washington's atrocious pass defense, 31st in the league. You see right there. If you look at what he's done the last couple of games, including when Bourne was still there, he's getting more targets. He's getting some of the, he had a couple of key targets in the end of that last game against Miami. Obviously the game was kind of already in hand. New England tried to make a game of it. But Washington, really, the way to attack them is through the air. And Demario Douglas is going to benefit, unfortunately, from Kendrick Bourne's injury. So let's get him in there. Again, PPR league, got to get someone who's get a lot of balls thrown to him. And let's stay in that game and go the opposite side of the ball at the tight end position with Logan Thomas, who is at 3,500. So got to have a bargain here. Logan Thomas is been getting, consistently hard targets, except for that Atlanta game. He's getting nice targets every game. Kind of been producing at a pretty nice floor level, and has some upside. There's a questionable tag on him. I haven't heard anything that looks like he's not going to play this week. Obviously, something to watch. There are some options around his price tag, but like the fact that he does bring a little bit of upside in addition to his floor because of his athletic ability.
I want to comment about this game, New England and Washington. I've been pretty vocal in previous shows how I think this Washington secondary is so bad and can be taken advantage of. But do you know how you can make your secondary even worse? The one thing that the Washington Commanders had was a pretty good defensive line. Well, guess what? Just happened. They sent Chase Young to San Francisco, and Marquez Sweat is also been traded away. So they're not the secondary is going to have to cover for even long periods of time. So I think Douglas is my favorite pick in this lineup. He's just completely mispriced at $4,000 as the number one wide receiver on New England facing this Commander team. And it may force a sneaky high scoring game where Washington has to score a pass more than otherwise they would, which might help Thomas.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you pointed that out. Right now it's something to watch. Obviously the trade deadline has passed, but really watch kind of the disposition of teams right now as you make your fantasy lineups. Well, Eric, we don't have any money left, but guess what? We get a chance to pick up a defense that has scored consistently higher than everyone who's priced even $1,000 more. And that's your Seattle Seahawks. Yeah, they're going up against Baltimore in Baltimore. Maybe a little bit of a tough matchup, but the Seahawks have averaged 5 sacks a game over the last 5 games, Obviously, one of them included that New York Giants game. But they can rush the passer, and sometimes Lamar Jackson is prone to getting pushed hard, and he can turn the ball over. So I'm not sure that they're going to keep the Baltimore Ravens to a touchdown or two, but they should score some points for us. Eric, looks like you may have somebody on a speed dial. What do you got?
No, I'm texting DraftKings. How dare you make the Seattle Seahawks only $2,400. How dare they?
Love it.
For the
love
new
it. So
listeners.
you're right.
So-
Slap in the face, but for us, a bargain to get in there. Really the only defense that was interesting at this price level.
Yeah, I've talked before about, boy, did Baltimore's offense just look incredible against Detroit 2 weeks ago. But other than that they and I think they were all right last week, but they have turned the ball over. Lamar Jackson is not the best in ball security. But look, the stats are skewed by the 11-sack game against the Giants, but they've been putting pressure on the quarterback in each of the last 5 games. And they just got another major weapon that just was a part of the trade deadline, that they were able to get the New York Giants defensive lineman Leonard Williams. That will greatly bolster their defensive line. So I'm excited that, we always choose to, not always, but a lot of times pay down on defense, and we get defenses that are like, oh, well, sorry, it's not much to say except that they're cheap. There's a lot to be happy about with the Seattle D.
Yeah, and just to kind of mention the pivots that you've kind of talked about, this is our lineup. This is what we'd like to go with. If you really wanted to get, instead of Kamara, you really wanted to get AJ Brown in your lineup, you can't find a running back option as cheap as Douglas with any upside at all. So you really have to make a change to one of the other positions as well. And that's just something that we didn't think it was interesting enough to go with. So we're pretty excited about this lineup. Again, I don't think we're going to see, on the DFSHub contest, I don't think we're going to see the scores that we've seen the last couple of weeks because of so many stars being out.
Yeah, it will be interesting, and we'll continue to look to see for different bargains that might pop up. But this is a great start, I think, here on Wednesday to a cash lineup. So, folks, we are halfway through the season. Can you believe that, Michael? So we're entering halftime, so we love to hear from you guys. This is the first time this year that we've done this dual show where we cover DraftKings and FanDuel in the same show, talk about core players. We would love to hear your feedback. Do you like this format? Is there other things about the show that you really like that you want to make sure we keep? Or is there any suggestions for things you'd like to see change as it relates to our coverage of NFL DFS? We so appreciate everyone in our community. Thanks for all of your support. And until we see you in double digits, week 10, take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
We'll put 2 videos on the screen that we think you'll enjoy.